It was just the way he looked. His eyes, he had starey eyes. It just didn't seem normal. I saw the man hit Lee. I don't know what with. I didn't see anything. Fell to the floor, I can't remember if I was knocked out for a bit or what, I don't know.
Tracie Andrews was born in April 1969, the middle of 3 children. Her parents' marriage didn't last. They separated when she was 6, and by most accounts, it left a mark on her that never fully faded. As a teenager, she'd wanted to be a model. That dream didn't pan out, and she went to work as a barmaid instead, moving between pubs in the Worcestershire area. By the time she was 21, in 1990, she'd become a mother. She had a baby daughter with a partner she was with at the time. That relationship didn't survive the year. She and her daughter's father separated when the child was still an infant, and Tracie raised her daughter largely on her own from then on, still working behind the bar to support them both. She was, by every account from people who knew her in those years, someone who wanted to be seen. Charismatic, good company on a night out. But partners who'd been with her before, Lee Harvey, described a harder edge underneath it, a possessiveness, a discomfort with the idea of them having any life that didn't include her. More than one described her temper as something that could turn quickly and without much warning. Lee Harvey's life ran along a steadier line. Born in September 1971, he'd grown up close to his mother, Maureen, and his sister, the kind of family that stayed in each other's lives as adults. By his mid-20s, he was working as a bus driver, well-liked by the people who knew him. He was also, like Tracie, already a parent, a young daughter from an earlier relationship whom he stayed involved with. 2 single parents then, each carrying the weight of a relationship that hadn't worked out, each still building a life around a child. That's who they were when their paths crossed in October 1994. It moved fast. Within 3 months of meeting, Tracie had moved into Lee's flat in Alvechurch. To people watching from outside, it had the shape of a whirlwind romance. 2 people who'd each had a rough go of things, finding something that felt, at least at first, like it was working. But the people closest to them saw something more complicated developing underneath it. Friends on both sides used similar words to describe the relationship over the 2 years that followed. Passionate but volatile. Jealousy ran in both directions. Arguments didn't always stay arguments. Police had already been called out to the flat once, weeks before that December night, over a dispute between them. After one particular incident, Maureen noticed a bite mark on her son's neck. She sat him down and told him, as gently as she could, that for his daughter's sake, it might be time to think about whether this relationship was one he should stay in. He hadn't made that decision yet, and on the last Sunday of his life, the 2 of them, and Tracie's daughter and his, were all still tangled up in trying to make it work. December 1st, 1996. It had been, by all later accounts, a difficult day. Another round of arguing. That evening, Tracie and Lee did what a lot of couples do after a fight. They went out for a drink, hoping the evening might smooth things over. They ended up at a pub in Bromsgrove. People there noticed the tension hadn't lifted. Sometime later, they got into Lee's car, a white Ford Escort RS Turbo, for the drive home to Alvechurch. Narrator, V.O. What happened on that road between the pub and their flat would, within 48 hours, be the only story anyone in Britain was talking about. By the time it was over, Lee Harvey was dead on Cooper's Hill, and Tracie Andrews was the one who would tell the world what had happened to him. 2 days after the killing, Tracie Andrews sat in front of the national press, bruised, a small cut on her face, visibly shaken, and she told her story.
About what time did you leave the pub?
Well, we left about 10 to 10, something like that, I'd say.
Yeah.
I didn't really look at my watch, I don't really know what time I left.
That's 10 to 10, not 10 to 11.
No, about 10 to 10.
Perhaps getting into a bit too much detail that we don't actually want to go into quite at the moment.
Person with like playing cat and mouse with each other for a while. And they overtook us. I was shouting at Lee to, slow down, just ignore them, stop the comedy. I don't know if a lot of men are like it, and a lot of women are like it, and get behind the wheel of the car. Sometimes you change personality. It's just the way he looked. His eyes, he had starey eyes. Just didn't seem normal. I saw the man hit Lee. I don't know what with. I didn't see anything. Fell to the floor, I can't remember if I was knocked out for a bit or what, I don't know. I just tried to stop the bleeding really and comfort him as much as I could. The driver walked off. It's nothing to do with the driver. Whoever this person is that was with you, you obviously know him. But he's ruined my life. Please, just tell us who he is, because you won't get in any trouble at all. It was not your fault.
On the drive home, she said, Lee had pulled out and overtaken another car, a battered, dark-colored Ford Sierra. It didn't end there. The Sierra fell in behind them and stayed on their tail, flashing its headlights, closing the distance, turning the drive home into something closer to a pursuit. A cat-and-mouse chase down a dark country road. By the time they reached the narrow lane at Cooper's Hill, Lee had had enough. He pulled over to confront the other driver. The two men argued in the road. For a moment, she said, it seemed to be over. The other driver started back toward his own car. Then, she said, the passenger got out instead. She told reporters she'd gotten out too, tried to put herself between them, and been struck for it. Punched in the face, called a slut. By the time she pulled herself back up, the passenger was already on Lee, and Lee was going down. She described the attacker as heavy-set, with unsettling, staring eyes. She said she'd knelt beside Lee afterward, heard him making a wet, gurgling sound, tried to remember anything at all from a first aid course she'd once taken. Sitting beside her at that press conference was Lee Harvey, Lee's mother, her hand held in Tracie's, the two of them appearing to the cameras, united in grief and in the hunt for whoever had done this. Police issued public appeals. They wanted the driver of the dark Ford Sierra to come forward, not as a suspect, but, by Tracie's account, as a witness who might help identify the man who'd actually held the knife. For those first few days, that was the case. Investigators were working, a search for two men in a beaten-up Sierra somewhere on the back roads of Worcestershire. Investigators don't take a story like that at face value. Not because they distrust a grieving fiancé by default, but because it's their job to check everything against the ground itself. And the ground told a different story than the one on the news. A single-lane country road like Cooper's Hill doesn't hide much. If a car had forced another to stop, pulled alongside it, cut it off, run it onto the verge, there should have been tire marks in the grass. Gouges. Something. There was nothing. Officers also noticed a strange detail about Lee's own car. It hadn't been left the way a car stops when its driver is frightened or forced to a sudden halt. It had been parked. Neatly, at the side of the road. Then came the timeline itself. Retelling her story to the press, Andrews gave times that didn't quite match what she'd told police earlier. Andrews had said the attack happened at the front of the car, by the driver's door. Lee dragged out to confront the men who'd run them off the road. But the blood told a different story. A scientist examining Lee's Ford Escort found a pattern consistent with someone dripping blood onto the floor not at the front of the car, but toward the rear of it. The blood was in the wrong place. And if the blood was in the wrong place, so was Lee, which meant so was her entire account of where and how he'd been attacked. Still, nothing yet proved the story false beyond doubt. It only raised questions the road rage account couldn't answer. The answer came from two directions at once. First, a child in a cottage near where Lee died told police something simple and devastating. On the night in question, she'd heard a man and a woman arguing outside. Not two men, not a stranger's voice at all. Then, two separate witnesses came forward, unprompted after seeing Andrews' press conference. Both had been driving that same lane at that same time, that same night. Both had seen Lee's white Ford Escort pass them. Neither had seen a second car. No Ford Sierra. No headlights following behind it. Nothing. The road rage attacker that an entire country had spent 2 weeks searching for, the fat man with staring eyes, had never been on that road at all. There was one more detail investigators kept returning to. In Lee Harvey's clenched hand pathologists found more than 80 strands of hair. Tracie's hair, pulled from her scalp with enough force to suggest a real, physical struggle between the two of them in the moments before he died. Not a stranger's hair, hers. The day after her press conference, Tracie Andrews took an overdose of pills, whether it was grief, panic, or the sense that her own story was collapsing beneath her, only she could say. But it changed the direction of the investigation. With no evidence of a second vehicle, a witness statement that contradicted her account entirely, and now a suicide attempt, police made their decision. She was still in hospital 2 days later when detectives arrested her.
Afternoon, detectives investigating the murder of a man in last week's so-called road rage attack have arrested a 27-year-old woman. Lee Harvey was stabbed to death in a country lane. His fiancé was with him when he died.
An evening in the pub with her boyfriend ended in death. According to 27-year-old Tracie Andrews, she left the pub with Lee Harvey in his Ford Escort. She told police they overtook another car which gave chase. At a press conference, she described what happened to them. Tracie Andrews said Lee Harvey was stabbed to death by a passenger in the second car. An hour ago, West Mercia police said they had arrested a 27-year-old woman. Jackie Rowley, BBC News.
While she was there, something else surfaced. Inside one of her boots, forensic examiners found a blood-stained impression, the unmistakable shape of a folded penknife. A knife matching that description had been in Lee's car that night. Investigators concluded she'd carried the weapon on her body into the hospital, and that several unexplained, lengthy trips to the toilet during her stay were when she'd finally disposed of it. Her jumper, heavily bloodstained, told its own story too. A spray pattern consistent with someone standing directly over a person as their carotid artery was severed. Not someone attacked from several feet away by a stranger. On the 19th of December, 1996, Tracie Andrews was formally charged with the murder of Lee Harvey, Birmingham Crown Court, July 1997. Andrews denied the charge to the very end, maintaining her road rage account through a month-long trial. The prosecution dismantled it piece by piece. 7 minutes, they showed, had passed between the fatal wound and Lee being discovered. 7 minutes in which Andrews made no attempt to reach any of the houses along the road or summon help from anyone at all. They laid out a different sequence of events entirely. An argument that had escalated inside the car, spilling out onto the road, Lee retreating as Andrews attacked him. A theory supported by the simple, grim fact that most of his 42 stab wounds were in his back. On the 29th of July, 1997, the jury returned its verdict: guilty of murder. Sentencing her to life imprisonment with a minimum of 14 years, the judge told her plainly that only she would ever know exactly what happened that night on Cooper's Hill, but that everyone in the courtroom had seen its consequences. She appealed the following year, arguing that intense media coverage had made a fair trial impossible. In October 1998, that appeal was rejected. It took until April 1999, nearly 2 years after her conviction, for Tracie Andrews to finally admit from prison what the evidence had already shown. There had been no Ford Sierra, no two men, no road rage attack of any kind. She had killed Lee Harvey herself. But even in confessing, she reached for one more version of the story. She said it had been self-defense. The physical evidence argued against it. A man defending himself, or being defended against, doesn't typically take dozens of wounds to the back while retreating. Her own mother, after the trial, said she couldn't understand why her daughter had invented such an implausible story in the first place, when, in her mother's words, the truth might have earned her more sympathy than the lie ever did. Tracie Andrews served 14 years. She was released in July 2011, barred from coming within 25 miles of Lee Harvey's family without supervision. She didn't remain Tracie Andrews for long. She changed her name, first to Tia Carter, later to Jenna Stevens, and underwent surgery through the NHS to alter the shape of her jaw, one of the most recognizable features from the trial-era press photographs. She resettled on the southern coast, and in 2017, she married. A former partner from inside prison later came forward with a warning that the same possessiveness that had marked her relationship with Lee had never disappeared. She said Andrews had once attacked and strangled her out of jealousy and publicly opposed her release. Lee's mother, Maureen, the same woman whose hand Tracie had held at that press conference in 1996, never stopped telling her son's story. In 2007, she published a book about the murder and everything it cost her family long after the cameras had moved on. Asked years later about Andrews' release, Lee's parents put it simply: some might say she'd served her time and deserved a second chance. There would be no second chance for their son or for them. For 2 weeks in December 1996, a country searched for a killer who never existed. A stranger built from a handful of invented details and a tearful appeal on the evening news, delivered while holding the hand of the one person who trusted her completely. The truth had been standing at the roadside the entire time.